In other words, they cannot proceed. They have to find out what the problem is before they can proceed. And the Bokoldana, the mediator between the spiritual world and the natural world, have to find out what needs to be done. Sometimes he has to go outside and pour libation to a particular deity in the house before he comes back in so that he can continue the process. So these are called kuga. Bokoldori is the magic stick. This is a magic stick. If the magic stick strikes any of these black spots, it means yes. If the magic stick strikes any part of this wooden board, that is called door, it means no. So this is the Bokoldori. It has to be that it's got to be V-shaped. If it is not V-shaped, it won't work. Now comes the Bokolzure. This is the flail or the tail. It's a part of the staff of the Bokoloko. Bokoloko Teal, I just indicated to you that the black portion of these pebbles are made of medicine. Normally, the medicine are stored in this dung or the horn. So each time the Bokoldana wants to predict if somebody comes looking for, spiritual power, this is what happens. He has to eat that and then share it with all parts of this that I'm indicating before he can proceed on to prophesy. I already indicated Bokol door. This is the door. That's a piece of wood in which iron slabs are embedded in it so that, the prophecy can go on. To strike any of these, it means yes. Abara, abara. That's how it goes. If, for example, the person asks, can I wear this? And the Bokolko wants to say no, it says the ground. Can I use this? If it starts, says yes. So these are iron slabs. The iron slabs are called kuto. One is called kruko. Bakolyala are all these ornaments that are inside the bag. They're all kinds of objects, and objects predict something. If you touch, for example, a meteoroid, it means death. So, for example, you go to talk or you go to look for a spiritual prediction from Abara. And the first thing this stick goes to touch is a meteoroid. It means that there's death. If it touches the meteoroid and then it hits the ground, it means that there's death on the land. Now they have to find out what to do. But those are the things. So those are the yala. The Basiyaka. Basiyaka is the most important thing among all these things. The most important. Because the Basiyaka is the rattle that calls on all the deities. For example, as I am in New York City here, if, for example, I want to summon all the land deities of New York to come and assemble so that we can prophesy, I start with Staten Island, because that's further off. and I'll go to Brooklyn or Queens, Manhattan, and then finally to the Bronx. And then the room that I'm inside is called Zongo. And then while I'm calling all this, I'm calling Staten Island, I'm calling Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Bronx, all of them, it will be rattling like this until they all come and sit down so that we can prophesy. This is Barsiyaka. Now, we also have Lumne, which is a bell. You know, whenever we go to church, there's always a sound of the bell. In African traditionalism, there was always a bell. And sometimes the Abba, the mediator between the spiritual world and the natural world, wears one himself. So wherever he's going, you think that somebody have put a bell on the neck of his cow or something. But the reason why that happens is because of the fact that wherever he goes, the spirits wants to know where he is and they want to surround him. That's why he's wearing that. And this is the Barsiyaka, the Guad rattle. Very important, very crucial in African traditionalism. Now, this particular, this Bokoloko that I'm talking about is normally made of ancestral mothers. There's never, in my tradition, I've never heard of a deity, a male deity, being a Bokoloko. It's always female. Yamarma. Yaba means ancestor. Ma means mother. That means ancestral mothers. And most of the time, the ancestral mothers are amalgamated. Sometimes they're three. They can be two, they can be three, they can be four. Never one. And they are egalitarian. They are equal. In other words, they are of the same parity. They are not higher. One is not higher than the other. And that's how they predict. So, for example, in my language, we say Taba. Taba means peers. Taba means, bodies. Taba means equal. Taba means egal. So, when they're summoning these particular three ancestral mothers to speak, they will say Taba, and they start mentioning their names. Now, the process of being an Abara, as I indicated, is very, very dangerous. Sometimes more than military training. But when it comes to the point whereby the human being who is going to be the voice of these ancestral mothers agrees that, yes, I will go through this marriage because I have no choice, then they'll call a group of people called the elders, high priests. In fact, they're called Yaradoma. That means the chest people, to come and then, solidify this marriage. And when they come, the first thing they do is to capture these ancestral mothers. Listen to me carefully. Is to capture these ancestral mothers. These are human beings, but they will figure out how to capture these ancestral mothers. Entertain them. The same time they are entertaining these spirits or these deities, they also entertain the human being who's supposed to be their voice or their true voice. During this time, the human being goes through what is called a trance. And I've seen it happen in my house. When the person goes through a trance, his wives, his children, even his mother, they'll be crying. They think that he's completely dead. Then they'll go and put him in a room as if he's laying in state for about 8 hours. Then they wake him up. When they wake him up, at that time he has already traveled to the spiritual world and has learned the secrets of dealing with these ancestral mothers. And while he's asleep, the Nyaradoma, or the church people, would hide some objects, sometimes about 5 miles away. When he wakes up, they give him this magic stick and tell him, Nzuho, I dare you. I dare you. I dare you. You are a cheat. Nzuho, Hokanyete, you can't see. Nzuho, you can't predict. If you can predict, take us along and find the objects that we have hidden. And this poor man who just was woken up from his slumber will hold a stick and run about 5 miles to go and show them where the objects have been hidden. And then we'll come back. Then another set of people will take him through the same routine. Sometimes it happens like that for about 5 hours before they finally do all the necessary sacrifices and then declare him, a mediator. So, Nzuho means I dare you. I dare you. And these are human beings insulting the spiritual, the ancestral mothers that they can't see. You can't predict. You don't know the future. You're lying to us. You're telling us that you can see. You punish this man for 5 years, for 10 years, and yet you can't see. With that kind of insults, the ancestral mothers also prove to them that yes, they're capable, and they show them all the things that they've hidden. So, now, how do you invoke the spirit to talk? How do you invoke the spirit to talk? Normally, a person comes in the morning, very early. I used to see in my house, when I was a child growing up, my father was a soothsayer. About 6 o'clock in the morning, there are at least 15 people sitting in front of our house. And the secret of going to a soothsayer is that if you get in front of the house, you greet the people in the house, just sit down. Don't ask, how are you doing? Because in my tradition, if you ask a person, how are you doing, even when they're sick, when they're on their death mat, they cannot say that they're not feeling well. They have to say they're okay. Then they'll start to explain to you what is wrong with them, what they're going through. So if you go in front of the house, you see other people sitting there in line, you just say, good morning, Yabulika, and then go and sit down. If you make a mistake and ask somebody, how are you? And they say they're okay, or you say you're okay, you got to go back home. Because if you are well, what are you doing in a soothsayer's house? So that the process of invoking, when these people line up, then they get to their tent, and they go into a room. The name of the room is Zong. That's a spiritual room where soothsaying is conducted. You see that it is in the shape of a pyramid, even though it's touched with grass. But the rest of the rooms in the house are different from Zong, the spiritual room. And you enter, the first thing you do an offering.